Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Sciences, SOS, Bachelor of Science, Multidisciplinary, BSCM, Botany, BBYCT 133 Plant Ecology and Taxonomy, Block-1 Ecology and Ecological Factors, Unit-4 Adaptations of Hydrophytes and Xerophytes. 4.1 Introduction. Plants grow in different habitats such as water and land. They possess certain characteristics that help in delete them to survive in these habitats. These features are referred as adaptations. These include various structural, morphological, and anatomical changes in the plants. The modifications in the morphology, anatomy, and structure help the plant species to adapt to a particular environment. The present unit describes the characteristic features of plants growing in water, hydrophytes, and dry arid land habitats. Xerophytes. Expected learning outcomes. After the study of this unit, you will be able to understand the term hydrophytes and xerophytes. List the various features of hydrophytes and xerophytes. Describe different types of hydrophytes. Describe different types of xerophytes and discuss ecological significance of both kinds of species. 4.2 Hydrophytes. Hydrophytes are plants that live in water. They are adapted to living in aquatic environments. They are found in areas such as ponds, rivers and streams, lakes, wetlands, and other aquatic environments. They develop certain features, adaptations, to ensure their survival in aquatic environment. Hydrophytes either float on the surface of water or remain fully submerged or half submerged in water. Some aquatic plants grow in soil which is permanently saturated with water. These plants are referred as emergent species. Hydrophytes depend on water for their growth and support. Classification of hydrophytes. In the last 100 years, several botanists and ecologists have made attempts to classify hydrophytes. The main emphasis has been on the manner in which these aquatic plants survive in the environment. Thus, we come across numerous ways at looking at the hydrophytes. Some of these efforts at classifying hydrophytes are enumerated here. Arbor, 1920, categorized aquatic angiosperms into two groups, rooted and non-rooted. The further categorization of these plants was done on the basis of foliage and inflorescence. Dancero, 1945, categorized aquatic forms into two types, Helophyta and Hydrophyta. The Hydrophyta was further subdivided into one, Natantia, which includes plants not fixed to the substratum, 2, Radicantia, which includes plants fixed to the substratum, and 3, Adnata, which comprises of plants fixed on rocks or other plants. Radicantia was further divided into immersa, i.e., partially immersed plants, and subimmersa, i.e., floating plants. Immersa was further divided into foliacea, i.e., plants with well-developed leaves, Junciformia, i.e., plants with reduced leaf development, and Nymphoidea, i.e., plants with floating leaves. Subimmersa was further divided into three classes, Vittata, i.e., plants having long stem and soft leaves, Rosulta, i.e., plants having reduced leaves, and Annuya, i.e., therophytic annuals. This paragraph needs to be checked carefully by the contributing author and then included in the final printing. On the basis of attachment of the plants to the soil, Luther, 1949, classified hydrophytes into different types. Haptophytes, i.e., plants which are attached to the substrate. Example: algae, lichens, bryophytes, and angiosperms. Rhizophytes, i.e., plants in which the basal parts penetrate the soil or the substrate in which they grow. Planophytes, i.e., freely floating plants with submerged or surface floating photosynthetic organs. These include planktophytes and plastophytes, larger floating algae, liverworts, ferns, and some angiosperms. Rhizophytes possess a short stem and a russet of stiff leaves with or without stolons. Some rhizophytes also possess a long stem, submerged leaves, and aerial or submerged reproductive organs as referred as elodides. Penfound, 1952, categorized hydrophytes into three aquatic forms: emergent, floating, and submerged. The British ecologists, Tansley, 1949, Spence, 1964, and Sculthorpe, 1967, classified vascular hydrophytes based on this recognition. Free-floating plants. Plants float on the surface of water. The roots are not attached to the soil surface but float on the surface of water. The roots are absent or poorly developed, fragile. These plants possess rosettes of aerial, floating leaves. The anatomy of leaf and stem shows the presence of reduced assimilatory tissues, thallus delete. The plants can be rhizomatous or of the cormous type. The reproductive organs are aerial and floating. Example: Salvinia, Eichhornia crassips, Pistia, Trapa, Lemna, Wolffia, Fig. 4.1.
Lemna possess one strand of root, while Wolffia is rootless. Some species such as Nymphea possess floating leaves attached on long flexible petioles, while other species such as Nymphoid show stoloniferous trailing stems with floating leaves present on short petioles. Figure 4.1, Eichhornia and Pistia, two free-floating water plants. Look at the screen. Floating submerged plants. The foliage, or the leaves, of these plants are submerged in water. The plants are heterophyllous, i.e., submerged leaves are present along with floating leaves. Leaves are filiform, i.e., ribbon-shaped or finely divided. These plants are found at depth of about 12 meters. The reproductive organs are either aerial floating or submerged, Fig. 4.2. They are of different types. Coalescent. The plants do not possess rhizome. The roots arise from nodes of leafy stems. Example: Elodia, Hydrilla, Najas, Potamogton. 2. Stoloniferous. The leaves are rosette type arising from a condensed, tuberous stalk called rhizome. Example: Isoetes, Sagittaria, Vallisneria. 3. Thalloid. The plant body is reduced to a cylindrical or flattened, creeping or floating, polymorphic thallus having erect or trailing secondary branches. Example: Hydrobrium, Potastemon. Submerged species rise to the surface to flower and sink to the bottom of the substratum to perennate. Example: Lemna trisulca, Utricularia. Rooted submerged plants. Plants in this group are completely submerged and anchored to the substratum. The plants possess long internodes, no palisade parenchyma, presence of chloroplasts in the epidermal cells, etc. Examples: Vallisneria, Hydrilla, Potamogton, Najas, Ceratophyllum, Myriophyllum. In Vallisneria, unisexual staminate flowers break off from the inflorescence and float on the surface of water. The scape of the pistillate flower elongates and reaches the surface of water, where it gets pollinated by pollens of the staminate flower. After fertilization, the scape shortens and young plant completes its development underwater. Figure 4.2, A. Hydrilla, a rooted submerged plant, and B. Sagittaria, a submerged floating plant. Look at the screen. Emergent plants. The plants grow in shallow water with their underground parts in water or water-saturated soil. The shoots grow well above the surface of water, Fig. 4.3. They are also known as marsh plants or helophytes. They commonly occur as rhizomatous or cormous perennials. Some of the species are heterophyllous. The submerged and/or floating leaves precede the mature aerial leaves. They produce aerial reproductive organs. Example typha, phragmites, scirpus, sagittaria. The leaf surface is reduced. In marshy hydrophytes such as Rhizophora, Cereops, special roots grow erect and project above the poorly aerated muddy soil. These structures called pneumatophores. Example, Rhizophora, Avicennia. Some varieties of rice grow with its roots partly submerged in water, wet. Paddy cultivation, i.e., under oxygen-poor conditions. The roots possess large air channels. The oxygen concentration is low in the soil. Roots of vascular hydrophytes live and grow normally in low oxygen conditions. Certain hydrophytes grow in still water or wet soil. Their roots possess the ability to respire anaerobically. Heterophyly is one of the characteristic features of hydrophytes. Heterophyly means the presence of two or more distinct types of leaves in a single individual. The leaf types may differ markedly in shape and in anatomical organization, or they may differ in habit and anatomy. In extreme case of heterophyly, the leaf types differ in all the above three aspects, and a full-grown plant may bear submerged, floating and aerial leaves at the same time. The change from one leaf type to the other may be quite abrupt, or it may be more gradual with transitional forms. Transition forms of leaves are found ranging from finely dissected to the fully aerial entire types. Only the veins of the aerial lamina are developed. The remaining development of lamina, the intervenous mesophyll tissue, is totally arrested. Example in the plant, Sagittaria sagittafolia, the first formed juvenile leaves are dissected or ribbon-shaped submerged type, and the later formed ones are the floating or aerial type, usually associated with the reproductive phase. Heterophyly can occur because of various causes such as age, genotype, nutrient status, and change in environmental factors such as photoperiod, temperature and moisture conditions. Fig. 4.3, a. Typha and b. Phragmites, the emergent plant species. Reproduction. Look at the screen. The dispersal of seeds and fruits occurs in water. Water currents carry the spores? Should it be seeds/fruits? Of hydrophytes, seedlings of mangroves and entire floating plants such as Lemma, Salvinia, etc. in submerged species, flowers are raised in the air above the surface of water for pollination. Most of the hydrophytes flower much less than land plants. Alodia canadensis and Accoms calamus propagate only by vegetative reproduction and do not produce flowers at all. The propagation of most aquatic plants occurs by vegetative means such as fragmentation. This has been noted in Alodia. Fragmentation of the plant body, followed by regeneration from any small part, bearing a vegetative bud, is a common occurrence in free-floating plants and submerged hydrophytes having long delicate stems. The propagation also occurs by runners as noted in Eichhornia and production of thalli as noted in Lemna. Colonization by means of rhizomes, stolons, runners, etc. is also widespread amongst hydrophytes. These organs store food and serves as hibernacula that enables survival of plants under unfavorable environmental conditions. When flowers are present, fertilization takes place at or above the surface of water. Hydrophytes also exhibit phenomenon known as pseudoviviparity. The hydrophytes of the family Alismaceae show pseudoviviparity. The vegetative propagules replace some or all of the sexual flowers in the inflorescence. Submerged hydrophytes bear plantlets in place of flowers all along the axis of their inflorescence. Some species of Sagittaria and Potamogton form small tubers on the ends of stolons or lateral branches, while in some species such as Hydrochoeris, Myriophyllum, and Utricularia, the inflorescence develops specialized dwarf shoots known as turions at the apex. Production of gemiparous buds from foliar tissues has also been reported in some species of hydrophytes. The buds arise at specific meristematic regions in the leaf lamina. A single leaf bears several such buds, each capable of developing into a plantlet, or bulbul, which may either drop off or become independent when the leaf decays. Adaptations in aquatic plants. Hydrophytes, plants, live either completely or partly submerged in water with some leaves or flowers out of the water. Some of the general characteristics of the hydrophytes include: 1. In free-floating plants, leaves are flat and contain air spaces that give the plant buoyancy, allowing the leaves to float on the surface of water. The leaves absorb sunlight to carry out photosynthesis. The leaves possess a thin layer of epidermis, as they do not need to conserve water to maintain water balance within the plant. 2. Roots are poorly formed or absent. Roots, if present, are thin, poorly developed and short. This has been noted in submerged hydrophytes. Example: Nymphea. Nelumbo possess thin and poorly developed roots present embedded in the mud. In floating species with rosette leaves, roots, adventitious, are shorter and less branched. Example: Salvinia, Eichhornia, Pistia, etc. The roots of these species develop chloroplastids in their epidermal and cortical cells, which trap light and contribute in photosynthetic activity. 3. Root hairs are absent. In some hydrophytes, root hairs are present. Roots are undeveloped. This is because they are not required to absorb large amounts of water. 4. Stem is long, slender, and flexible in submerged plants. Example: Hydrilla, Potamogton. Stem is slender or thick, short and spongy in free-floating forms. Example: Eichhornia. Stem is a well-developed rhizome in rooted plants with free-floating leaves. Example: Nymphea, Nelumbo, Pontidaria. The tough and woody rhizomes have been found in Cyperus, Scirpus, Typha, etc. The stem has little or no lignin tissues. This is because the strengthening tissues are not required. The hollow stem helps the plant have buoyancy and provide space for storage of gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. The plants have undeveloped xylem tissues because there is no requirement for water transport within the tissue. In these plants, water can directly enter into the leaves and stem via osmosis, and therefore transport of the water is not required. The gases diffuse from the leaves into air and chyma of the stem. The gaseous exchange allows the plant to float and survive in the aquatic environments. Gaseous exchange is also important for meeting the oxygen requirement of cells during respiration. The gases diffuse through the stem and are important for sustaining carbon dioxide within the plant. 5. Leaves of hydrophytes differ depending on their submergence in water. In submerged forms, leaves are thin, long and ribbon-like or finely dissected. Example: Vallisneria, Potamogton. In partly submerged plants, leaves are wide/broad, floating on the surface of water. This increases surface area for absorption of sunlight required for photosynthesis and evaporation. 6. In some hydrophytes, leaf petiole or the base forms a bladder-like swelling. Example: Tropa, Pistia, Hydrochoriz, etc. These flat surfaces help in floating of plant and mainly consist of spongy parenchyma. In Eichhornia, the whole petiole may be swollen into a bulbous spongy float. In submerged species, the petioles or the leaf bases remain slender and elongated.
The bifurcations in the leaf increase the surface area for the absorption of nutrients, exchange of gases such as carbon dioxide. The linear and the finely divided forms of leaves in the submerged parts offer less resistance to water currents. Dissected leaves have a higher surface area volume ratio. Mechanical tissues, such as angular collenchyma, found along the margins of finely divided or ribbon-shaped leaves of some species such as Eichhornia, help in resisting tearing stress. 7. Leaf and stem cells of hydrophytes possess intercellular air spaces called lacuna or erenchyma, Fig 4.4. These are small air pockets present in the cell and assist in the exchange of gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide. Air spaces help in maintaining buoyancy in the cell. The plants retrieve gases via diffusion and dissolution in water. Exchange of gases takes place through diffusion. 8. Vascular system, xylem or phloem tissues of stem and roots is not well developed. This is because that the plants are constantly surrounded by water. They can absorb the water through their leaves and stems by osmosis and hence do not require xylem and phloem for the transport of water. 9. Cuticle and stomata are absent particularly in the submerged species. Thick waxy cuticle if present around on the stomata facilitates lamina colonization by means of rhizomes, stolons, runners, etc. is also widespread amongst hydrophytes. These organs store food and serves as hibernacula that enables survival of plants under unfavorable environmental conditions. When flowers are present, fertilization takes place at or above the surface of water. Hydrophytes also exhibit phenomenon known as pseudoviviparity. The hydrophytes of the family Alismaceae show pseudoviviparity. The vegetative propagules replace some or all of the sexual flowers in the inflorescence. Submerged hydrophytes bear plantlets in place of flowers all along the axis of their inflorescence. Some species of Sagittaria and Potamogeton form small tubers on the ends of stolons or lateral branches, while in some species such as Hydrocharis, Myriophyllum and Utricularia, the inflorescence develops specialized dwarf shoots known as turiones at the apex. Production of gemiparous buds from foliar tissues has also been reported in some species of hydrophytes. The buds arise at specific meristematic regions. In the leaf lamina, a single leaf bears several such buds, each capable of developing into a plantlet or bulbil, which may either drop off or become independent when the leaf decays. Adaptations in aquatic plants. Hydrophytes, plants live either completely or partly submerged in water with some leaves or flowers out of the water. Some of the general characteristics of the hydrophytes include 1. In free-floating plants, leaves are flat and contain air spaces that give the plant buoyancy, allowing the leaves to float on the surface of water. The leaves absorb sunlight to carry out photosynthesis. The leaves possess a thin layer of epidermis as they do not need to conserve water to maintain water balance within the plant. 2. Roots are poorly formed or absent. Roots, if present, are thin, poorly developed, and short. This has been noted in submerged hydrophytes. Example: Nymphia. Nelumbo possesses thin and poorly developed roots present embedded in the mud. In floating species with russet leaves, roots, adventitious, are shorter and less branched. Example: Salvinia, Iconia, Pistia, etc. The roots of these species develop chloroplastids in their epidermal and cortical cells which trap light and contribute in photosynthetic activity. 3. Root hairs are absent. In some hydrophytes, root hairs are present. Roots are undeveloped. This is because they are not required to absorb large amounts of water. 4. Stem is long, slender, and flexible in submerged plants. Example: Hydrilla. Potamogeton. Stem is slender or thick, short and spongy in free-floating forms. Example: Iconia. Stem is a well-developed rhizome in rooted plants with free-floating leaves. Example: Nymphia, Nelumbo, Cyperus, Serpis, Typha, etc. The stem has little or no lignin tissues. This is because the strengthening tissues are not required. The hollow Stem helps the plant have buoyancy and provides space for storage of gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. The plants have undeveloped xylem tissues because there is no requirement for water transport within the tissue. In these plants, water can directly enter into delete the leaves and stem via osmosis, and therefore transport of the water is not required. The gases diffuse from the leaves into parenchyma of the stem. The gaseous exchange allows the plant to float and survive in the aquatic environments. Gaseous exchange is also important for meeting the oxygen requirement of cells during respiration. The gases diffuse through the stem and are important for sustaining carbon dioxide within the plant. Leaves of hydrophytes differ depending on their submergence in water. In submerged forms, leaves are thin, long and ribbon-like or finely dissected. Example Vallisneria, Potamogeton. In partly submerged plants, leaves are wide broad, floating on the surface of water. This increases surface area for absorption of sunlight required for photosynthesis and evaporation. In some hydrophytes, leaf petiole or the base forms a bladder-like swelling. Example Trapa, Pistia, Hydrocharis, etc. These flat surfaces help in floating of plant and mainly consist of spongy parenchyma. In Iconia, the whole petiole may be swollen into a bulbous spongy float. In submerged species, the petioles or the leaf bases remain slender and elongated. The bifurcations in the leaf increase the surface area for the absorption of nutrients, exchange of gases such as carbon dioxide. The linear and the finely divided forms of leaves in the submerged parts offer less resistance to water currents. Dissected leaves have a higher surface area volume ratio. Mechanical tissues, such as angular collenchyma, found along the margins of finely divided or ribbon-shaped leaves of some species such as Iconia, help in resisting tearing stress. Leaf and stem cells of hydrophytes possess intercellular air spaces called lacuna or parenchyma, Fig 4.4. These are small air pockets present in the cell and assist in the exchange of gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide. Air spaces help in maintaining buoyancy in the cell. The plants retrieve gases via diffusion and dissolution in water. Exchange of gases takes place through diffusion. Vascular system, xylem or phloem tissues of stem and roots is not well developed. This is because that the plants are constantly surrounded by water. They can absorb the water through their leaves and stems by osmosis and hence do not require xylem and phloem for the transport of water. Cuticle and stomata are absent particularly in the submerged species. Thick waxy cuticle if present around on the stomata facilitates transpiration and protects stomata. Stomata are mostly absent or if present are non-functional. Here is no need to conserve water as the water is abundantly available. 10. Vascular tissue is reduced and steely consists of few vascular elements bundles towards the periphery. 11. The secondary for increasing growth is completely absent. This is an important feature for thickness of stems and roots. 12. A significant proportion of biomass is represented by the underground parts, e.g., rhizome, roots, bases of the aerial shoots in vascular hydrophytes. Example in Typha sp. More than 50% of the biomass can be accounted by the roots. 13. Closely packed hairs present at the hydrophobic tips protect the leaf surface from getting wet. The strength of floating leaves results from their leathery texture. The mucilage accumulation on the aerial organs protects them from getting too wet. Mucilage also prevents rapid diffusion of water through the cell wall. This benefits the plants where stomata are confined to the upper surface of leaf lamina. 14. Heterophily is the phenomenon noted in hydrophytes. The different forms of leaves are produced on the same plant. Example: Sagittaria sagitticifolia, Limnophila heterophylla. In submerged species, entire, rounded or slightly lobed floating aerial leaves are found along with linear, ribbon-shaped or finely dissected submerged leaves. 4.3 Xerophyte. The plants adapted to live in dry habitats are termed as xerophytes. They possess means to prevent water loss or to store the available water. They are defined as plants that grow on substrate that usually become dilute, possess gravitational groundwater at a depth of 20 to 25 centimeters. They are basically of two types, ephemerals and succulents. Succulents. Water. Example: cactus are the plants that store agave. They possess thick, fleshy stems or leaves. The adaptations in xerophytes can be morphological, structural, or physiological, or both. The adaptation in xerophytes include waxy leaf coatings, times ability to drop leaves during dry periods, times ability to fold leaves to reduce sunlight absorption, and times development of a dense, hairy leaf covering. The adaptations help the xerophytes to escape drought or to endure recurrent drought. During drought, dehydration of plants' cells and tissues takes place. A considerable increase in the temperature causes overheating leading to dehydration. Heat-resistant plants respond to high temperatures. Stimulation in protein synthesis and high respiration rates have been noticed in these plants. These are the results of high levels of nucleic acids, especially RNA, complexed with protein. Could it be with complex proteins? Please check. The hardened plants maintain all their essential processes at a high level during drought. Leaves of hardened plants are usually rich in starch and all tissues are high in organic high-energy bond phosphates, ADP and ATP. Hardened plants have a greater absorbing surface in the root system. Thus, the absorption of mineral elements is more intense in hardened plants. Roots are more resistant to high temperatures because of presence of high levels of starch. Small leaves. Xeromorphism in these plants occur because of rapid increase in nucleoproteins, enhanced protein synthesis, cell division and differentiation of cells. Protective adaptive reactions against high temperatures mainly involve increase in respiration and increased synthesis of organic acids which bind to released ammonia and increase in delete the hydrophilic viscosity of the protoplasm. Reproductive organs are sensitive to dry conditions and injures too. Reproductive organs such as gynecia leads to a reduction in fruit production. Pollination and fertilization are also affected in water deficit conditions. The cell shows changes in colloidal chemical properties such decrease in elasticity and protoplasmic viscosity. Morphological characteristics of xerophytes. Plants appear dwarf, thick or stunted, aloe, agave, or prostrate, euphorbia. Prostrata. The root system is well developed, extensive, penetrating very deep. Root hairs and root caps are very well developed. The leaves are reduced in area to check transpiration, casuarina. The leaves may be modified into phyllodes. Acacia melanoxylon, or they become succulent, aloe, agave, yucca. The leaves show various features like gray or light green coloration, rolling, wilting, leaf fall, leathery glandular outgrowth, leaf spines, and a coating of wax or presence of hairs, etc. The stems are usually stunted, hard, rigid, and covered with thick bark. The stems may be modified into phylloclades, opuntia, euphorbia, or cladodes, ruscus, asparagus. The stem may show coating of hairs or wax, or spines, etc. In plants where the leaves are absent or caducous, the stem performs the function of photosynthesis, capillaries aphylla. The lamina of the leaf may be very much segmented, acacia, prosopis, or long, narrow and needle-like, pinus. Types of xerophytes. Three types of xerophytes have been known on the basis of differences in their morphology, physiology, and taxonomy. 1. Ephemeral annuals. The ephemerals are prominently found in semi-arid regions. They complete their entire life cycle within a few weeks. With the onset of rains, seeds of plants germinate, quickly grow to maturity, set flowers, and set seeds. This means that they completed their entire life cycle in a short span of time before the soil dries out again. The morphological adaptations in ephemerals include small size and large shoots in comparison to root. Such plants have been termed drought escaping and considered as false xerophytes as they do not really endure drought. They cannot survive low water conditions for long period of time without permanent injury to the cells, or rather escape it. Most of these plants are small rounded, dense shrubs represented and belonging to the families Papilionaceae, Astragalus sp., etc., Compositae, e.g., Artemisia, Zygophyllaceae, Boraginaceae, and Graminea, some grasses. 2. Succulents. Succulents also contribute a large percentage of vegetation to the flora of the most semi-arid regions. They are frequently found in locally dry habitats such as sandy soils, sea beaches, etc., of more humid climate. The succulents are a distinct group of plants, not only in structure but also in metabolism and water economy as well. The accumulation of organic acids, pentosans, and mucilage by succulents is well known. Their structural modification enables the plant to accumulate, specify the product S, in the proliferated tissue, depending upon the extensibility of individual cells and also large reserves of water during brief rainy seasons. Succulence is due to the proliferation of parenchymatous cells accompanied by an enlargement of vacuoles of mature cells and a considerable reduction in the size of intercellular spaces. The cells of the water storage tissues are rich in glue-like mucilage. This holds water very efficiently. Water is lost through transpiration. A few stomata are seen in the epidermis of the fleshy stems. The stomata open only at night. The succulents shrivel during the periods of drought as they become depleted of water and swell up again with the advent of rain. The features such as relatively thick cuticle and closing of stomata during day are important factors permitting conservation of water. Fig 4.5. The succulents such as cactus can survive rainless months and replenish their water supply again during the following rain. These plants belong to the families Euphorbiaceae, Crassulaceae, Liliaceae, Amaryllidaceae, Portulacaceae, etc. Example of stem succulents is cactus, and the leaf succulents include agave, aloe, Sedum. Cacti are unique among all types of desert plants in having shallow but vast spreading roots, enabling them to absorb superficial water quickly. The rootlets wither away when supply of water in the surface soil is exhausted and reappear within a very short time when there is, again delete, a supply of water in the soil. Plants decrease the water loss by evolving a metabolic change. The stomata open during night, absorb CO2, dark fixation, which is stored in the cells in the form of dicarboxylic acids, e.g., malic acid. During the day, they keep their stomata closed, thereby preventing loss of water. The dicarboxylic acids get transformed into sugars at night, crassulacean acid metabolism. They avoid drought by means of conserving water. The tissues of succulents do not have any intrinsic resistance to the harmful effects of drought. The survival of plant depends on xeromorphic characters such as reduction of leaves to spines, ridges or protuberances so that water can be conserved. The thick and waxy epidermis helps in retention of water. Example, Opentia dilleni, Nagfani, is a succulent xerophyte. The function of photosynthesis has been taken over by the stem in the absence of leaves. The stem is flattened and green, referred as pillowclade. It is thick and fleshy due to the storage of water. The phylloclades have thick cutic and sunken stomata. Mucilage helps in retaining water. The axillary branches are modified into spines present in the areoles. They reduce transpiration. Euphorbia rollina. Euphorbia rollina. Danda thaw is a succulent plant with caducous leaves. The stem is angular, green and bears spines in pairs. It performs the function of photosynthesis throughout the year. The stem stores water. Succulent plant with caducous leaves. And bears spines in pairs. It performs the function of photosynthesis throughout the year. The stem stores water. The stem is angular, gare. Function of photosynthesis throughout the year. The stem stores water. Allobarbadensis. Allobarbadensis. Shrub. The stem is reduced. Thick and fleshy, leaves store water. The margin and apex of the Gikanvar is a succulent shrub. The stem is reduced. Thick and fleshy, leaves store water. The margin and apex of the spiny to reduce transpiration. Thick and fleshy, leaves store water. The margin and apex of the spiny to reduce transpiration. Leaf are. The leaves are thick and arranged in. The leaf surface is shining and bears a thick cuticle. The stomata are present on the lower surface. Leaf bears tuft of trichomes or hairs. Retaining water. The leaves are thick and arranged in. The leaf surface is shining and bears a thick cuticle. The stomata are present on the lower surface. Leaf bears tuft of trichomes or hairs. Mucilaginous latex. Whorls. The leaf surface is shining and bears a thick cuticle. The stomata are present on the lower surface. Leaf bears tuft of trichomes or hairs. Mucilaginous latex. Present in the plant helps in retaining water. Is a cultivated succulent xerophyte. The leaves are modified into scales. The latter are spiny and bear a whorl of axillary branches. The branches are modified into cladodes. Each cladode is a leaf-like needle. Asparagus is a cultivated succulent xerophyte. The leaves are modified into scales. The latter are spiny and bear a whorl of axillary branches. The branches are modified into cladodes. Each cladode is a leaf-like, needle-shaped and fleshy structure. The roots are adventitious which store food and water to form. Is a cultivated succulent xerophyte. The leaves are modified into scales. The latter are spiny and bear a whorl of axillary branches. The branches are modified into cladodes. Each cladode is a leaf-like, needle-shaped and fleshy structure. The roots are adventitious which store food and water to form. Shaped and fleshy structure. The roots are adventitious which store food. Root tubers and fascicles. 3. Non-succulent perennials. Members of this category are the true xerophytes, euxerophytes, enduring. The drought enduring of water in the atmospheric wind velocity, deficiency usually. Process such, euxerophytes, and the plants. They successfully endure long and soil drought conditions are usually accompanied conditions such as high temperature, low humidity velocity, continuous dearth accompanied by dry humidity and often high euxerophytes, all of which favor high transpiration rates. In euxerophytes, usually such reaches 60 to 70% of their mean fresh weight. As cell elongation. Example Acacia nilotica, kikar or babool, is a non-succulent, drought enduring tree. It possesses an extensive taproot system. The stem is thick, erect and covered over by brown corky bark in its older parts. The leaves are compound, stipulate, and bipinnate. The pinnules are small and oval. The stipules are modified into spines to reduce transpiration and prevent grazing from delete by animals. Solum xanthocarpum is a wild herb with yellow prickles all over the surface, commonly found in dry areas and wasteland. The spines reduce transpiration and also provide protection against grazing animals. Other examples are Ajmon mexicana, prickly poppy, jungly post, nerium, odorum, cana, Ziziphus nummularian, jungly berry. The leaves are small, leathery with the hairy or bloomy coating. The stipules are modified into spines. The branches are slender but stiff. These species grow in arid areas or wastelands. Adaptive features in xerophytes. The morphological and physiological characteristics enable plants to withstand drought. The major features include 1. Dehydration. Desert plants can withstand considerable dehydration as high as 50% of their dry weight. These plants can tolerate protoplasmic desiccation to a much larger extent by changing the colloidal chemical state of the protoplasm. The gelatinous coating on the cell walls of the blue-green algae helps in maintaining hydration in cells. 2. Rapid elongation of taproot. In arid and semi-arid regions, the surface soil, which is no deeper than a few cmas, dries out. The plant possesses long taproot system that penetrates deep into the soil. This prevents drying of the soil from the surface downwards by the extensive root system which helps the soil in retaining water. 3. Absorptive capacity. The production of extensive root system in proportion to shoot system not only increases the total absorptive capacity of the plant but reduces the exposure of the plant to the atmosphere. Many desert plants have adventitious roots, which are deep and are capable of absorbing even the little amount of available water present in the moist subsoil. 4. High osmotic pressure of the cells. High osmotic pressure of the cells is a characteristic feature of the xerophytes. It indicates high solute content of the soil. The cells possess a very high water potential, 100 to 150 atmosphere. The cell walls exhibit little or no elasticity. Rigid and inelastic cell wall structure prevents cellular collapse under water stress conditions and influences the water holding capacity of the cell. This feature enables plants to adapt themselves to drought conditions and provide resistance to water loss through transpiration. This also helps in the development of negative water potential and helps in uptake of water from dry soils. 5. Ability to reduce transpiration rates. Leaves are modified to spines to reduce loss of water through transpiration. Anatomical features, e.g., dead hairs and sunken stomata, help to reduce transpiration rates in xerophytes. The stomata close during the day. The leaf shading provides a means of enduring transpiration for branches devoid of leaves. Many xerophytes retain their leaves throughout the season. In these species, the epidermis is multilayered, heavily cutinized and waxy to provide greater resistance to desiccation under extreme dry conditions. The closure of stomata is coupled with cutinization of the epidermal cells. Plants of this type are referred as sclerophylls, hard-leaved. The thick cuticle prevents the breakage and consequent damage to the leaves caused by high wind. Generally prevalent in desert areas. Heavily cutinized leaf surface reflects much of the sun's rays, thereby reducing transpiration through reduced heat absorption. A greater density of epidermal hairs on one or both surfaces of the leaves is a prominent feature of xerophytes. The stomatal surface is protected by a dense coating of hairs. Living hairs probably increase the rate of cuticular transpira tie-in by increasing the surface of the leaf but reduce the transpiration by reflection of large proportion of incident light. Dead hairs perhaps reduce the rate of stomatal transpiration under conditions of intense sunlight or strong wind. Hairs act as a mechanical barrier to keep the air currents away, above. Delete from the stomatal surface. Sunken stomata, i.e., presence of stomata in cavities below the level of epidermal surface are found commonly in xerophytes. They help in reducing water loss via transpiration. The spongy tissue is not present but compactly packed palisade cells are present beneath both upper and lower epidermis. They contribute largely towards reduction in transpiration rates. Under drought conditions, many xerophytes possess the capacity to change their form or position so that the amount of light received per unit area generally becomes less. In this way, the aerial transpiring surface is protected from direct contact with air. The leaflets of many desert legumes fold upwards in such a manner that only approximately half the leaf surface is exposed to air. Some desert grass leaves roll or fold lengthwise along the longitudinal furrows in their upper surface. These are caused due to turgor movements caused by loss in turgidity of the rows of enlarged colorless cells, often termed bulliform cells, motor cells. This phenomenon has been observed in species of family Ericaceae. In certain erect and shrubby